Welcome to Husband Talking. Explore riveting tales of infidelity with us. Please subscribe and like to stay updated. Let's begin.
I woke up thinking about the weekend. It was Thursday, just one more day of work until I could relax. Tomorrow, I had plans to hang out with my two favorite girls, my 3-year-old daughter Emily and my mom. I would fix a few things at Sarah's place and spend the rest of the day playing with Emily in the yard. My wife, Lisa, was away for work and wouldn't be back until late Saturday. So it would just be me and Emily. After getting Emily off to daycare, I headed to work for a fun half day of putting the new course catalog on our company's website. When I was done, I could pick up Emily and head out. I finished a lot sooner than expected and was heading home at 9:30. I came home to a big, empty house. I couldn't pick Emily up until 12, so that gave me some time to throw a few things in the car and grab a sandwich. While chomping on my peanut butter and banana sandwich with my left hand, I started throwing what clothes and stuff we would need for the week in a pile on the bed with my right. Computer geeks know how to eat and work at the same time. A bottle of shampoo I tossed on the pile rolled off and onto the floor on Lisa's side. I used my best telekinetic abilities to try to make it come back up, but as usual I failed, so I had to walk over and physically pick it up. I didn't immediately see it, so it must have rolled somewhere. I knelt down and fumbled around under the bed. It wasn't there, so I went fishing under the nightstand. I came back with the bottle of shampoo and a book. "I wonder if Lisa knows this is under here," I said as I looked at the little book. It wasn't one of her novels or some reference book for her work. It appeared to be a journal of some sort. I sat on the bed for a long time and debated whether to open it and read what was inside. On one hand, I didn't want to invade Lisa's privacy if this was some sort of personal diary. But on the other hand, if there was something in it that I should know, then maybe I had to read it. It might be completely innocent, and then again, it might not. The need to know won out, and I opened to the first page and immediately recognized Lisa's handwriting, so there could be no doubt about who wrote it. The date of the entry was 10 months ago. I started reading. Journal entry dated February 10th, 2024, Thursday. I've decided that keeping this journal is in my best interest. I don't know what the future will bring, but at the moment, I can only see doom and gloom. I know that everything I've done and will do will end up hurting John and Emily, but I'm so stuck I can't find any way out, and I feel I'm screwed in a very big way. Maybe keeping track of everything will in some small way help should the hit the fan. I don't know if it will, but one thing I know, it won't change a damn thing, and I just hope some good can come of it. This whole mess started just over a month ago when one of my bosses called me into his office. Michael Turner is one of the executive managers for Novatech Enterprises Limited and is a powerful and imposing man. Everybody knows not to mess with him. He was with one of the internal auditors, Robert Mitchell. They told me that some of the accounts I was responsible for were short some money, $25,000 to be exact. They showed me the paperwork that showed my deposits to be $900 short each time I made one. It looked like I took out $900 in cash at the time of the deposit. They said that they wanted to give me an opportunity to explain what happened to the money before they went to the corporate office and the police. I didn't have any idea about the money. I never took anything, but they had a solid paper trail showing that $900 cash was missing each time I made a deposit. I told them I didn't do anything wrong and I didn't know about the missing money. I tried to explain, but they wouldn't listen. I ended up breaking down and crying right in front of them. They said that since I had no explanation, they had no alternative but to turn the matter over to the authorities. I had to go back to my desk and clean it out. I was terminated and was to be escorted off the property at the end of the day. I went back to my desk and cried. Around 3, Mr. Turner called and said he wanted to talk about my situation and to come to his office. After a lot of discussion and a lot of pleading and crying on my part, he said he believed my story and felt sorry for me. He said that he might have a way to fix it, but I had to trust him. He offered me a deal. He wouldn't turn the matter over to the authorities, and he would personally cover the missing money if I would become his personal assistant. The job had been vacant ever since his previous assistant didn't show up for work one day and nobody ever heard from her again. I would have a new job working just for him, and I wouldn't be handling any money. He said that I could trust him to help me out of the mess I was in, and over time I could pay back what I owed him. It sounded too good to be true, and I was happy to take him up on his offer. Besides, going from a contract specialist to an executive manager's personal assistant was an increase in salary and responsibility. I asked him how I was going to pay back the money that I owed, actually didn't know, and he said to trust him, he would make it all clear after I settled into the job. He said that he would call the auditor and tell him that he found the missing money in another account, one that he forgot to mention before, and that I was only doing what I was told to do. I would be off the hook with them. That night, I told John about my promotion, but I didn't mention anything about any missing money. He was so happy for me that I just couldn't say anything about it. This was my problem, and John has always wanted me to work out my own problems before coming to him for help, and I didn't want to disappoint him this time. He'll never forget how he looked at me as we sat at Giovanni's and sipped our martinis. He said that I was moving up in the corporate world and my future looked good. He was so proud of me. The next day, I moved into my new office. It was a small outer office with a door leading to a small lounge in the back, which had a full bathroom, a closet for clothes, and a small couch. There was also another door that connected to another lounge at the back of Mr. Turner's office. His lounge was arranged the same way, but his had a larger couch and a small fully equipped bar. As the news got around the office that I was Mr. Turner's new administrative assistant, I got a lot of stares from my female coworkers and smiles from the men. I didn't know what any of it meant, and it felt kind of strange. Later that day, Mr. Turner called me into his office, and I sat next to his desk as he told me about my duties. He explained that I had the usual assistant duties: keep his appointments, greet company clients, type and file, make his coffee, etc. He also said that I was required to accompany him to company functions and meetings at times other than regular work hours. I might even be required to accompany him on meetings out of town. Then he told me about how he expected me to dress. He said that I was his personal representative and a representative of the company, and I needed to dress the part. I always thought that I dressed nicely, but he said he thought that I dressed too conservatively and he wanted something better suited to his assistant. He said that I was to wear shorter skirts. He also said that I was not to wear pantyhose. I could wear stockings or go bare-legged. I wasn't to wear a bra. I had to keep my hair loose and flowing over my shoulders. I could wear panties if I wanted, but they were optional. I sat there in total amazement. When I started to say something, he put his hand up and stopped me before I could get a word out. He said I was to change the way I dressed because I was a beautiful woman, and he wanted me to display my beauty and not hide it. It would be beneficial to have a beautiful woman present when clients and other managers met with him. He also reminded me about the missing money and said that I had to start dressing the way he wanted starting the next day, or he would terminate our agreement. He said that I could trust him, and he wouldn't do anything to hurt or embarrass me. He said that he knew what he was doing. I was in a daze and couldn't think straight. I didn't know what to say. All I could do was sit quietly and stare down at my hands. He pushed an envelope over to me and told me to take the afternoon off and go shopping and get some new clothes, something like he described that would show off my beautiful body. He said that if I was worried about what my husband would think, then I could keep my new wardrobe at work and change into it first thing in the morning and then back to my regular clothes before going home. But while at work or with him on company functions, I had to dress like he wanted. I took the envelope and went back to my office and thought about it. On one hand, he assured me that he wouldn't do anything to hurt or embarrass me, but on the other hand, I might get a lot of stares and strange remarks from people around the office. I was stuck anyway because of the missing money. The more I thought about it, the more I thought that it might be exciting to have people look at me and think I was beautiful. I've always been kind of a plain Jane, and maybe I deserve to look and feel sexy for once, but I would draw the line and wear panties. That afternoon, I went shopping and left everything in the trunk of my car. The next day, I went to work wearing my usual business suit but changed into one of my purchases in my bathroom. It was a simple sheer white blouse and a short black skirt, and I really mean short. The hem was over halfway up my thigh. I didn't wear stockings because the tops would have shown with the short skirt. I felt funny with no bra. Afterwards, I just stayed in my office and did my work. Around lunchtime, Mr. Turner called me into his office and told me to come in through our connecting lounges. As I entered his office, I saw that he was leaning against the front of his desk. As I approached, he told me that I looked beautiful, but he needed to make sure that I followed his orders about my wardrobe. He asked if I was wearing a bra, and I said I wasn't. He said that he had to check and told me to unbutton my blouse. I just stood there looking at him. After a few seconds, his expression changed, and he got a stern look on his face and said in a forceful and ominous way that I had to show him or else. I was embarrassed, but I unbuttoned my blouse and stood there. It wasn't open, so he could see that I wasn't wearing a bra. He said, "Good." Then he said he wanted to make sure I wasn't wearing pantyhose, so he told me to pull my skirt up and show him. Again, I hesitated, and again he gave me a stern look, so I hesitantly reached down and pulled up my skirt and showed him. Beautiful was all he said as he turned and went over behind his desk to sit down. I lowered my skirt. As he sat down, he yelled at me and said, "I didn't tell you to put your skirt back down. Do only what I say and when I say." I raised my skirt back up and stood there looking at the floor. He just sat there and looked at me, smiling. After a couple minutes, he said to get dressed and go back to work. My wardrobe examination happened like that every day for the rest of the week. On Monday morning, he called me in, and we went through the clothes check again. Except this time he said to take off my blouse and hand it to him. He looked mad when I stood there looking at him. I started to cry. He just growled, "Do it." I slowly took off the blouse and held it out for him with one hand and covered myself with the other. "Now lower your hands," he said. I cried as I did. "Now the skirt." I lifted up the skirt and stood there, and he said, "No, hand it to me." I wanted to run and hide, but I couldn't run anywhere dressed as I was. I reached around back, pulled the zipper down, and let the skirt fall to the floor. I bent over and picked it up, handed it to him, and just stood there with tears running down my cheeks. All he said was, "Even more beautiful than I imagined." I was embarrassed and felt hot all over. He went back and sat down and put my clothes on the desk. He just sat and looked at me standing there topless. After a while, he smiled and said I could take my clothes and go back to my office. I started to put my clothes back on, but he stopped me and said to walk out the way I was and dress in the lounge. I grabbed my clothes and quickly left. Tuesday and Wednesday were repeats of Monday, but I cried less each day. By Friday, I was naked for his inspection. The next Monday, after I was naked, he said to sit down in the chair across from him. He said that one of my duties as his assistant was to make sure that he was happy at all times. I said I didn't understand what he meant, so he painted me a very graphic picture. He wanted me to have sex with him when he called. I was to drop whatever I was doing and come to him. I wasn't to tell anybody about what I was doing, especially my husband, and if I told anybody, then our deal about the missing money was off, and he would personally make sure that John and Emily were hurt. He didn't say how, but I knew what he meant. I told him that I couldn't do anything like that. I loved my husband and would never do anything to hurt him. He said he didn't care what my problems at home were, but if I didn't do what he said, then he would fire me and John and Emily would pay for my decision. He gave me until the next morning to decide. I went home and thought about my predicament. I debated about telling John about my problem but decided that I had to handle the situation on my own. I also cried a lot. John just thought I wasn't feeling well, so he took care of Emily and left me alone. I could see no alternative, so the next day when we went through the wardrobe inspection, I reluctantly said that I would do what he asked. Before I left the office, he said he wanted a little taste. I backed away from him, frightened. He just stood up and growled at me. He said that if I ever hesitated again or questioned him when he gave me an order to do something, then I would pay for it dearly. If I moved again, then he would fire me right then and there. He walked in a circle around me, looking me up and down as I stood there. Suddenly, he stopped and went back to his desk and sat down. He said to get dressed and go back to work. The next day, he called me into his office. He was on the phone and motioned for me to come over and sit on his lap. When I did, he started rubbing my back and shoulders. He said that when he told me to do something, I was to be enthusiastic. I was to enjoy myself. I was never to fake it. He let go of my hair and said that he had to punish me. He said to get dressed and go back to my desk. I had to give him a BJ that evening. When I got home that night, I just stared at John as he made supper and wondered what kind of monster I had become. I just cheated on him. I hated what I did. I hated myself. I went to bed early and cried myself to sleep. The next day, Stephen called me into his office again. He was standing beside his desk, talking on the phone again, and he told me to strip. He took me right there. When it was over, I showered again. I also cried again because I cheated again. I couldn't help myself. I know I'm on the road to hell, but I can't find an exit ramp. Over the next couple of weeks, I had sex with Stephen whenever he asked. When he would call and tell me to, I would undress in my lounge and walk into his office naked. I was getting more comfortable having sex with him like that, even though I still cried afterward, but I was feeling less and less guilty about what I was doing. This went on for weeks. One day, I went into his office and there was that internal auditor, Robert Mitchell. Stephen said that he was telling Mike how wonderful my BJs were, and I was to demonstrate by giving him one. I was more than flabbergasted. I agreed to have sex with Stephen to save myself from something that really didn't happen, but I never agreed to be with anybody else. When I refused, he told Mike to leave and come back in an hour. When we were alone again, he didn't yell or threaten. He simply went over to his TV, put in a DVD and pressed play. The screen showed the two of us having sex on the couch in his lounge a couple of days before. I could see my face clearly, and it showed how much I was enjoying him. He said that he recorded every encounter between the two of us since we started, and he would send the videos to my husband and my parents and have them distributed in the staff lounge if I didn't give Mike a BJ when he returned. I had no choice, so when he returned, I did. I don't remember if I cried or felt guilty about cheating on John by then. I was numb. That was the start of Steven sharing me with others. Since that day, I've given service to two other executive managers, Mr. Lee and Mr. Brown, and the head of sales, Alan Davis. I also had sex with Charles Foster, the head of accounting, bent over Steven's desk while he watched. Steven told me that my duties had changed. In the future, I would be available to any of the executive managers by appointment. I was to do whatever they wanted, the same as with him. I would still be available to him whenever he wanted without an appointment. I was also to go with the management team on appointments and meetings and satisfy potential customers. I was to do whatever anybody wanted with anybody they wanted. I was now officially an office hooker. Well, that brings everything up to date. The reason for this journal entry is to document the events that led up to my becoming the Novatech Enterprises Limited hooker. From now on, I'll try to write down everything I do and who I do it with. Maybe I can get out of this mess someday by using this record. God, I'm sorry for what I'm doing to John. I know what he would do if he ever found out. He would divorce me and take Emily away from me. He would probably want to kill Steven too. I would be very lucky if that's all he did, because John has a very strict and conservative moral code, and I violated it in 100 ways. I hate myself for hurting him, but I couldn't help it. I trusted Steven and he lied to me. I was manipulated, and I was too dumb to see where I was headed. I'm in so deep now I can't even see the top of the hole. I know that what I'm doing is very, very wrong, but I just can't help myself. I can't stop. If I do, then I could be hurting the two people that I love more than any other in the world, John and Emily. I don't care what would happen to me, I just don't want them hurt. Please, God, help me and find a way to forgive me. I closed the journal and sat there on the bed. I didn't realize until right then that my shirt front was wet. The tears were still falling as I threw the journal across the room, crashing into our wedding picture. My jaw was clenched, and my fists were balled up and shaking. I wanted to hit something. I wanted to scream. I wanted to kill that pig Steven. I wanted to strangle Lisa. At the same time, I wanted to die. Somehow, without thinking about it, I got up from the bed and made my way to the bathroom. The peanut butter and banana sandwich came back up violently. The only saving grace was that bananas taste the same coming up as going down. After my guts were empty, I stuck my head in the shower and turned on the cold water. It had no effect on clearing my head or making my pain easier, but at least the vomit was off my face. I went back into the bedroom, picked up the journal, and straightened the picture that I had knocked over. I held the picture of Lisa in her wedding gown and thought about how beautiful she was. Her long black hair was piled up on top of her head for the wedding, but normally it flowed straight down her back. She had the sweetest smile, with dimples that words couldn't adequately describe. People have always compared her to Princess Diana, with her regal nose and wide-set eyes. I just thought that she was the most beautiful woman I would ever met. I touched her face behind the broken glass and set the frame back down. I sat on the bed and opened the book to read some more. The phone rang. "Hello, Mr. Adams. This is Mary at Oakwood Elementary. Emily is here in the office waiting for you to pick her up. Daycare was over 30 minutes ago. We were worried when you didn't show up. Is everything all right?" I looked down at my watch and cursed silently. "Yes, I just lost track of time. They'll be there in 10 minutes. Thanks." I tossed the journal on the pile of stuff that we needed for the weekend and grabbed the corners of the bedspread and lifted. I looked like some sort of a bargain basement Santa as I carried everything out to the car and dropped it in the trunk. As promised, in 10 minutes, I was walking into Oakwood Elementary School. Emily was sitting in a chair with her arms crossed, looking quite mad. When she saw me come in, for a moment she gave me an angry sideways look, but her face softened, and she ran to me and gave me the most wonderful hug. She didn't see the tear that fell on her back as she did. The drive to Sarah's house usually takes only an hour by using the highways, but I wanted to review what I had just read and think about what I should do, so I took back roads the whole way. When I arrived, Emily was asleep, so I carried her up to the spare bedroom and told Sarah that I was going to start on the list of jobs. Ever since Dad died, I was the one that did Sarah's little maintenance jobs that she couldn't do by herself. I really just wanted to be alone with my thoughts. I worked well into the night. Sarah brought me dinner in the middle of the backyard where I was cutting limbs out of her maple tree. All the time I thought about what I read. I was broken-hearted. I had to stop work several times to wipe away the tears. I only read one entry dated 10 months ago but thought that if this started way back then, how far has it gone? What more devastating news about my wife would I discover when I read the rest? I was in no hurry to find out that my life was over if my marriage was over. Well after dark, Sarah came out and sat next to me on the picnic table. "What's wrong?" she asked gently. All I could do was look at her in the dim light like a 6-year-old whose favorite puppy just died. I fell into her arms and cried. I didn't cry tears of a grown man but tears of a little boy that wanted his mommy to make things all right again. I cried on her shoulder, and she held me and patted my head. After crying on her shoulder for much too long, I sat up and wiped my face. I looked down at the ground and said, "Sarah, I just found out something about Lisa. Something that makes me believe we can't be together anymore. It's bad, Sarah, real bad. I don't know what to do. Right now, I want to kill her, but I love her too much. I just can't stand idly by and let things continue like they are. I've got to do something, I just don't know what. I know I've got to be a man and do what I need to do, but I don't know if I've got the strength. It's really a mess, Sarah. My mother has always had a serenity and wisdom about her. Usually, wisdom comes with age, but she's always had it for some reason. When everybody was running around like crazy, screaming and hollering, she was calm and serene. She always knew what to say in every situation to make things better. I've always trusted whatever she said. She looked up into my eyes and said what I knew to be right. She said, "John, I've always believed that you were a good man, maybe better than you think you are. If you say that you have a problem with Lisa, then I believe you have it within yourself to fix it. You may have to forgive her for whatever it was she did, or you may have to cut your losses and run. Either way, I know you can and will do the right thing. Just remember 2 things first. Don't do anything that would hurt that little girl of yours. Emily is a wonderful child, and she needs her father. Second, he'll always be here for you. I've got your back if you need me." I paused to think about what she said. I knew it had deeper meaning than just the words she used, so that meant I would have one more thing to think about this weekend. Thanks, Sarah. I knew I could count on you to tell your little boy to be a man. He'll do what I have to, and I promise Emily won't be hurt. We walked arm in arm through the dark backyard to the house. She went into the living room and I went to check on Emily. April 3rd, 2024, Friday. I didn't sleep much, maybe a few minutes here and there, so that's why I felt like as I sat on the edge of the bed watching the sun come up through the window. I could smell Sarah's fried apples drawing me down to breakfast, so I got up, cleaned up, and went downstairs. "Morning," I said. "Good morning. I want to ask how you slept because I could hear you tossing and turning all night. Just eat your breakfast, you'll figure it out." "Thanks, Sarah. Oh, after I finish my work today, can you watch Emily for a little while? I want to walk back to the old grotto. I won't do anything stupid, I promise. They'll be back, I just want to be alone for a while and think. That's all. Okay, but you be careful. I don't want to have to go back there and drag you home like after your father's viewing. Just relax and do what you have to do. Emily and I will have a wonderful day." It was just after lunchtime that I finished all of the little jobs on the list and then a few more that I found to do. Sarah and Emily had gone grocery shopping, so I grabbed Lisa's journal and a couple of beers out of the fridge and started walking toward the woods. When I was a kid, I used to go back to the edge of the grotto to be by myself when the weight of the world was on me. When I was growing up, it was my safe harbor, a place where I could think and make decisions. Sometimes my best friend and I would sit on the edge for hours and talk about what we planned to do when we grew up. Life seemed to look better when you were staring down into a 150-foot hole. I sat with my back against a rock and looked out over the edge. It hadn't changed much since the last time I was here, just after my father's funeral. I took a long drink of one of the beers and opened the journal. The entries after the first added nothing to what I already knew or helped with the dilemma that I was in. She gave names of the men she had sex with and what she did and how many times. For the most part, they were dry and emotionless, but once in a while, she expressed how wonderful something felt or how much fun she had. She still sounded remorseful when she wrote about me, though. As the entries went along, the writing seemed to become more and more relaxed, more matter of fact. The things she did, however, were absolutely amazing. I came to one entry and read, Journal entry dated July 12, 2023, Thursday. This past week was absolutely amazing. I would have never believed I had it in me to do what I did. But I did. Well, let's see where to begin. Okay, Monday a week ago, Stephen said that we were going to go around and deliver the fiscal year-end bonuses to the salesmen in the region. Every day, we were going to drive to a different branch office and meet with the sales staff. I was to dress extra nice for the meetings. On Tuesday, we went to the Western Region branch office. We met with the 4 salesmen: Jim Gray, Paul Simmons, Melvin McCabe, and John, and the department sales manager, Norman Gray. Stephen told them how proud he was that they were the top-producing branch this year, and he was there to deliver their bonuses. He said that this year there was an added bonus. He said that every one of them could spend 2 hours in a hotel room with me in addition to the check he handed them. They could do whatever they wanted. All but one of the men was salivating like a pack of dogs as I stood there. Stephen gave me a key and said to go to the hotel and wait. An hour later, the first man came, and we screwed like rabbits. He left, and the next man arrived. A while later, he was a bit shy, and all I did was give him a BJ and talk. After he left, the third man showed up. When he left, I was sure I couldn't take it anymore. And then the department sales manager showed up. I guess that's what it means to be a manager. I was an exhausted woman when Stephen came back to the room that evening. Of course, I had sex with him before we drove home. On Wednesday, we went to the Southern Region branch office. Their sales manager, Sid Green, and the 4 salesmen, Eric Green, Ian Stone, Leroy Johnson, and Sam Schultz, met with Stephen and me, and we went through the same routine. I was too tired to perform for Stephen when he came back to the room. When we drove home, I slept the entire way. On Thursday, we went to the Central Region branch office. All in all, this was a pretty amazing week. I got to do things I've only fantasized about. I had multiple men at the same time, and I earned $300 in tips. But most importantly, I enjoyed it. I still felt awful about cheating on John afterward. When I was with someone, I became a totally different person and really put a lot of enthusiasm into whatever we did. When it was all over, I reverted back to myself and felt like I just wanted to die. I'm like 2 different people: the work me, who does everybody I'm told to. I hate that person. And the other me, a loving wife and mother. That's the real me. I now don't feel anything when I'm doing what I do at work. I guess that's what being a hooker means. I put the journal down and stared out over the gorge. This would be a perfect place to end it all, I thought. Nobody would find the body for a long time, if ever. But why was I thinking about ending my life? I didn't do anything wrong. It was that maggot Michael Turner and Lisa who did wrong. I shouldn't be the one to suffer for what they did. They should, but I was suffering. Lisa's writing sounded less and less remorseful. It sounded like she enjoyed what she did. I wonder if she enjoyed it more than being with me. They'll have to ask her that when she gets back Saturday. I decided that when she gets back, I'll confront her. If she denies anything or doesn't tell me the truth, I'll take Emily and come live with Sarah. Divorce is too kind of an end for her for what she did to us. Then Monday, I'll go beat the out of Mr. Michael Turner. I picked up the journal and read. Lisa's exploits were exhausting. She entertained all of the managers at a manager-only Christmas party. For New Year's Eve, she was in a hotel room for the use of any company employee that wanted her, and judging from what she wrote, there were over 20 men and women. No wonder I wasn't invited. She entertained customers in her lounge, at their hotel rooms, or at their place of business throughout the year. She even screwed a pizza delivery guy as a tip after he brought pizzas to a meeting. She did the town's chief of police and a couple of his deputies as payment for something they did for the company. At one management retreat, she put on a performance with a group of male and female strippers that, in her words, will remain in the memories of everyone that saw it for the rest of their lives. Her writing told me a lot about what she was thinking, whether she intended to or not. I could almost read her mind. I read about a split personality, however. The only personality I ever saw was the one she displayed at home. I don't know if I would like the other one. The last journal entry was just a week ago. She was out of town this weekend at a company function, so you could bet the farm that she was the center of everybody's attention again. I know I couldn't stand to hear any more about her exploits. I just wanted to be out of my misery. I closed the journal and closed my eyes. The images of every act she wrote about swirled around in my head. I leaned over the gorge and threw up the first beer and what little breakfast remained. When I was again, I cleaned my mouth out with a swig of beer and then laid down in the weeds and cried. I was feeling pretty sorry for myself about then. I had no clue that any of this was going on. How could I have not known? How had I missed the signs? I could look back now and see things that maybe should have made me suspicious, but I had no reason to doubt or mistrust Lisa. But I couldn't mistrust her. Hell, I loved her. She always told me when she had a problem, so maybe she didn't think what she was doing was a problem. We never fought. She always kept up with her part of the household duties. She was always a great mother to Emily. Sure, our sex life has fallen off some, but I figured that it was a byproduct of our working so hard. I wonder how many times I got sloppy seconds. I never attended any of her company events, usually because I wasn't invited or I passed it up because I'm not much of a party person. What else did I miss? I also felt like this was partly my fault. The men in her life always manipulated Lisa pretty easily. But when we married, I vowed to never take advantage of her naive nature. I didn't want to do to her what other men had done. Her father dominated every aspect of her life until she went away to college, and that included the way she dressed, school activities, and dating. At college, she was free to do what she wanted, but she hooked up with a guy that was just like her father, domineering and controlling. He took advantage of her emotionally and sexually before tossing her aside like yesterday's newspaper. He made her do things that would rival some of the exploits in her journal. He crushed her spirit by dumping her. I met her just after the owner of the restaurant she worked in fired her after his wife found out that he was secretly photographing her in the toilet in his restaurant. She was very trusting and believed everyone, especially men, when they handed her a line. She fell for it. I guess I wasn't paying attention to the men around her. I never felt more like an idiot than I did at that moment. Someone said that hindsight was 20/20. Hindsight sucks. April 4th, 2024, Saturday. Sarah walked us to the car as we left. John, please call and let me know what's happening, and don't do anything to get yourself into trouble. I know you'll find a solution. I love Lisa just as much as you do, but if half of what you told me about last night is true, then she's changed and isn't the same Lisa you married. I trust your judgment. Remember, you've got Emily to worry about. I'll call Sarah. Emily and I got home in the afternoon and played for the rest of the day in the backyard. She was totally exhausted by the time I put her to bed for the night. I grabbed a couple of beers and went to the living room to wait for my wife to come home. At 8, the front door opened, and Lisa stepped through, carrying her suitcase. "Hi, honey," she said as she set her bag down. "How was your weekend? Did our little girl behave herself?" I looked up from my beer and said, "My weekend was probably not as good as yours. I got screwed by only one person. You probably had dozens." She looked at me like I had just grown a second head. "What's that crack supposed to mean? I was working all weekend. I'm tired, and the flight back was lousy. Now I come home to your weirdness? What the hell?" I reached under the chair, got the journal, and flung it across the room like a frisbee. It nearly hit her in the head as it whizzed by and crashed into the china cabinet. She stood there with her mouth open, staring at me like I had 3 heads. I didn't move. She turned and went to the china cabinet. When she saw what had destroyed the glass front and the wine glasses from our wedding, she froze. She didn't do anything for a long time. Finally, she reached into the mass of broken glass and picked up the journal. The next thing she did surprised me. She quietly walked out the back door. I got up and looked out the kitchen window and saw her sitting in the little swing set, clutching the journal to her chest and sobbing violently. I was in no mood to interfere with her, so I went back out to the living room and started beer number 2. I finished beer 2 and started number 3 when I heard the back door open. Lisa came in, sat down across from me, and put the journal on the coffee table. I didn't know, nor care, if she was all cried out or not, but her face was all red and puffy, and the mascara from her eyes was streaming down her cheeks. Her normally well-kept hair was a mess. Her bottom lip was quivering, and she was still breathing heavily. She looked down at the book and spoke with a hoarse voice. "Now you know. What are you going to do?" I glared across at her and said, "I haven't decided yet, but whatever I do will be big. You might say epic." "Are you going to divorce me?" she asked quietly. Like I just said, I haven't decided yet. She looked up, caught my eye, and said, "I'm almost glad you know. I never wanted to get in as deep as I am. I never wanted to hurt you, hurt us, but I did. I know what I did. I know what I am, and I have no excuses. I never wanted to start. I just want it all to end. I want to go back to being a normal working mother. I'm tired of everything, all the sex, all the lies, all the people controlling my life. I want to be with you and Emily, but am afraid that I've totally screwed that up. You will never know how sorry I am for what I did. What I am. John, talk to me. Please say something. I read your journal. Everything. And I have a couple of questions. First, was this weekend another sex fest for your journal? She bowed her head and said, yes. I was pretty sure, but I had to ask. I don't want to know the details, but I do want to know something very important. Did you do it voluntarily, and did you enjoy it? From what I read, it seemed like you're really into all that you do and get off a lot doing it. You seem to be enjoying yourself way more than we ever did. Is that true? No, I didn't enjoy it more than we ever did, just differently. John, I love you. I never wanted to hurt you. I'll admit that I do enjoy the attention and the sex, but it's different than what you and I do. You and I make love. Everyone else, well, it's just sex. And besides, no matter what I say or how I say it, I come off as a lying, cheating hooker. Well, I am a hooker. I am a liar. I am a cheater. I can't deny it. I do enjoy it when I'm with someone. I still do it because I have to, but I never enjoyed lying to you. There, I said it. Is that what you wanted to hear? I'm not sure what I wanted to hear. I just didn't want to hear any lies. They'll give you one thing: I don't think you're lying. I don't think you could lie your way out of this mess anyway. We sat in silence for a long time. So, is there an us anymore? She asked softly. Honestly, I don't see how there can be. You put your life ahead of your family. I was lied to all these months and probably the laughingstock of everybody that came inside you. You abandoned Emily and me for a long line of so-called clients. No, I don't see any way to be us again. The us you're talking about ceased to exist the minute you got down on your knees in front of that dirtbag Hart. I was just too stupid to notice. Lisa fell over onto the couch, sobbing into the cushion. And speaking of Hart, I plan to go to work with you on Monday and beat the out of him as you clean out your desk. From what you wrote, he blackmailed you into doing all of this. He was responsible for getting you into this mess, but you were responsible for staying there. I've always believed that everybody involved in a bad situation has to pay. I don't know how many men and women you've been with, but each and every one of them is just as guilty as Hart. I want to punish everybody, but Hart will have to do for now. Let me tell you something I remember from a long time ago. During the time of the Cold War, politicians had a term for what I want to do. They called it the nuclear response. If someone did something against the United States, then the retaliation would be swift and devastating. One atomic bomb and the problems were gone. So were all of the enemies and a lot of innocent people. If I had an atom bomb, I would shove it up Hart's butt and press the button. That's what I want to do. I want to make everybody pay and pay dearly, and I don't give a damn about collateral damage. I don't know how realistic that is, so I'll start by beating the out of that maggot on Monday. John, don't do anything stupid. He's a powerful man with a lot of friends. You might get into something you can't get out of, just like me. Monday, one way or the other, it'll end this. Now get out of my sight. I don't want you near me. You can sleep in the spare bedroom from now on. Just get the hell out of my sight. Lisa ran from the room, sobbing, followed closely by the sound of the spare bedroom door slamming. I got up and got another couple of beers. I wasn't going to sleep very well, so I might as well sleep tight. April 5th, 2024, Monday. Lisa sat quietly as we drove to her work. She spent the night crying. I knew that because every time I got up to go to the bathroom, I heard her. Her ID badge got us into the building and past the guard. Lisa went to her office and I walked past the receptionist and into Hart's office. He was sitting behind his desk, smiling. I didn't know what to make of it, but it didn't matter. I was going to jump over his desk and start wailing away. Before I could take 2 steps, something grabbed me around the neck and pulled me backwards to the floor. I felt something very heavy on my chest and looked up to see a huge man dressed in a security guard's uniform sitting there, and another was using his knee to hold my head down to the floor. No matter how much I struggled, I was pinned under 500 pounds of muscle, so I gave up. I was looking up as Hart's face came into view overhead. He looked down at me and smiled and said, I was wondering when you would show up. I've been expecting you. The guard at the front door called when he saw you come in. The 2 gentlemen holding you down are part of my personal guard. They will do anything I ask, including breaking your neck and finding that cute little daughter of yours and doing something you wouldn't want to know about. As for that you call your wife, she's mine. I own her. She's mine to do what I want with, and you can't do anything about it. I've got a good thing going here with her as my personal hooker, and if you try to interfere in any way, I'll have you gutted and thrown in the nearest dumpster. Then he'll make sure your little Emily never sees the first grade. Do you understand what I'm saying here? All I could do was mumble. I still wanted to get up and kill him, but I was outnumbered and outgunned. Well, Mr. Brave Husband to the rescue. Let me just show you what I mean. I couldn't see very well from the floor, but I heard him say, "Lisa, come in here." A door opened, and I heard Lisa say, "Oh my God. No, please don't hurt him. Please." Hart yelled, "Shut up and get over here. I want to give your hubby a little demonstration." The two overstuffed guards wrestled me into a sitting position and lifted and placed me in a chair. One handcuffed my hands behind me, and the other handcuffed my feet to the legs of the chair. Someone shoved a gag in my mouth. I was facing Hart and Lisa as the two guards stood behind me with one hand on each of my shoulders. "Now, Lisa, I want you to show your little hero here just what kind of work you do for us. So strip and get down on your knees now." She stood and looked at me for a long time. When Hart reached up and grabbed a handful of her long black hair and pulled her head to his face, he whispered something in her ear. I don't know what he said, but she immediately stepped forward and started unbuttoning her blouse. Tears streamed down her face as she dropped the garment on the floor behind her. He took her right there. I tried to struggle against the chair to get out and kill that pig. When the lights went out, I didn't know what hit me, but that's all I remembered from the office. The next thing I remembered was waking up in a hospital room. There was an 4 in my left arm, and my right arm was in a cast. I could only see out of one eye, and my mouth felt like it was full of cotton. When I tried to yell out for a nurse or somebody, nothing came out. The door opened, and a police officer walked in. When he got close enough for my one eye to focus on, I noticed that he was the local chief of police. He walked over to me and smiled. "How are you, Mr. Adams? Not in too much pain, I hope. You're probably wondering what happened. Well, we found you in your car off of Riverbend Drive in the ditch. It looks like you swerved to avoid a deer. Well, that's the story we filed down at the office, but you and I know better, don't we? See, Michael Turner is my brother-in-law, and he's done a lot for me. One of those things was a fun-filled evening with that cute little wife of yours. So I want to keep on his good side and keep on porking your old lady. That's why, when he called and told me you fell down a flight of stairs, I was only too happy to take care of things for him. But I didn't want him involved in any way, that's why you ran off the road. Now, just so you understand me, if you don't go along with my little story, then you'll have to pay a visit to your home and find some illegal drugs or something that your neighbors wouldn't be too pleased about. Keep quiet and let my brother-in-law do what he wants, and nobody gets hurt, especially you or that lovely daughter of yours. Capice? April 6, 2024, Wednesday. Lisa drove me home and helped me get into bed. I had a broken arm, broken jaw, 2 broken ribs and several bruises and scrapes, and I needed all the help I could get. I just didn't want it to be her. Hell, I hadn't seen her since she was on her knees in front of Hart. She showed up to take me home without a word. Where she'd been for the last 2 days, I didn't ask either, and I didn't care anymore. I didn't say a word to her, and she didn't say anything to me. She just looked sad. I couldn't talk and I couldn't eat. I just laid there and listened to my mother's voice in my head saying not to do something stupid. I did, and look where it got me. Lisa avoided me when she was home, and little Emily helped whenever I asked for something to drink. April 10, 2024, Saturday. I was able to get around by myself a bit and move to the living room. Around 5, the front door opened, and Lisa walked in. Closely behind her were the same 2 guards that had danced all over me, and then Hart. Hart held out a small gift bag and placed it next to the chair where I was sitting. It's just a small get-well present. I don't want my favorite employee to feel that we're neglecting her little husband. It's some DVDs for you to look at while you're incapacitated. I know you'll enjoy watching them almost as much as we enjoyed making them. Lisa just looked at the floor as he stood over me gloating. Lisa dear, would you please go into the kitchen and get me something to drink? My throat is awfully dry, and stay in there until I call you. Oh, now don't worry, we're only going to talk. Now go on. Lisa left, and Hart pulled up the coffee table and sat down. Okay, John, you don't mind if I call you John, do you? Well, John, here's what's going to happen from now on. Lisa is going to continue working for me. She's going to do what she did before, but since you now know, I can expand her duties a bit. Before, she only did people during work hours. Now she can work in the evenings and on weekends too. If I call and tell her to go somewhere, she will go. If I tell her she's to work the weekend, she will work the weekend. If she is to travel for business, then she travels. If you make one bit of trouble, then, well, you know what happened before, it may happen again. It may happen to someone else too. Just be quiet, live your life like the worm husband you are, and don't make waves. I get really mad when someone makes waves. You don't want me to get mad now, do you? I didn't say a word. I just glared back at him with all the hate I could muster. Good, we understand one another. Now, is there anything you want to say to me before we go? The bandage around my jaw didn't make talking very easy, but I managed. Yeah, but your two goons there prevent me from speaking my mind. Oh, don't worry about them. They won't do anything this time, so speak up, my boy. Okay, hey race, what I have to say, a wrong is unredressed when retribution overtakes its redresser. It is equally unredressed when the avenger fails to make himself felt as such to him who has done the wrong. Hart and his goons just stood there looking at me like I was a monster from outer space. Then he smiled and said, the little worm is a bookworm too. Just say what you want to say in plain English. What I'm saying is that I'm going to get you one day. I'm going to get everybody. I'm going to make you all pay for what you did to Lisa and what you put me through. So, if I were you, I would be constantly looking over my shoulder. Mark my word, I'm going to nuke you and everybody in your little sex company. Everyone's going to pay and pay dearly, and there will be one hell of a lot of collateral damage. Mark my words. And just how do you plan to accomplish this? A cuck like you can't even protect his own wife, let alone take revenge on hundreds of people. You're all talk, a holy. Lisa, come back in here. Lisa came back in the room and sat down. It seems like your little hubby wants to play the hero. He wants to protect you and make sure bad men like me get their just rewards. It's all bull, of course, but I just want to tell you that your work hours have expanded. We'll talk about the details tomorrow, but suffice it to say that John here is going to be sleeping alone a lot from now on. Now go get ready. You have an appointment at the Grandview Hotel on Sunset and see a friend of mine named Manny. The next time you talk to that son of a, tell him that I'm not his messenger boy. If he wants you to go somewhere, he'll have to talk to you himself from now on. I'm out of the loop. Lisa looked sadly at me and turned and went upstairs. 30 minutes later, she was dressed and out the door. She didn't say a word. I sat in the living room in the dark and cried, thinking about what I had done. The beer didn't help. April 13th, 2024, Saturday. I could hear the retching all the way in the kitchen. Lisa was in the bathroom upstairs throwing up breakfast. A few minutes later, she came in the room. John, I'm sick. I mean really sick. I've got a fever, my throat hurts, and I ache all over. I think I've got the flu that's going around. If I do, then it'll be miserable for a couple of days, and then it will be over. I don't want Emily or you to get it, so please stay away. Can you get me something for my throat and some Tylenol, please? I can't go out or to work like this, so it'll just stay in bed until it's gone. Go back to bed. I can take care of Emily, and it'll get you something. She went upstairs, and I took Emily out for ice cream and a visit to the pharmacy. April 19th, 2024, Friday. I got up to take Emily to school and go to work like I usually do and found that Lisa had already left. This was the first time she's been out of the house since last weekend. Obviously, her flu was gone, or she wouldn't have gone to work. But maybe Hart called and reminded her that she wasn't keeping everybody happy down at the office, and she just had to work through whatever she had. Whatever. I just had to keep doing what I was supposed to do and act like the devoted husband. I didn't want to land in the hospital again, or worse. August 26th, 2024, Tuesday. Summer and spring had come and gone. Lisa was working harder than ever, sometimes away from home for days at a time. She was looking thinner and more haggard every time I saw her. We rarely spoke to one another. Whenever she was home, Lisa would take Emily to the park or shopping or anywhere they could be together. She always came back with a smile. We celebrated a very quiet Christmas. Emily didn't notice any difference because Santa brought her the Barbie doll she wanted and Barbie's house and Barbie's Corvette and Ken. Emily was in Barbie heaven. I told Lisa that I didn't want anything from her, but she gave me an expensive gold pen and pencil set anyway. I didn't get her anything. In the afternoon, Emily and I went over to Sarah's for dinner. Lisa wasn't welcome at her house anymore, so she stayed home. Sarah knew everything that was happening, and now she refused to even talk to Lisa. I think if she could, Sarah would strangle her. We had a lovely dinner, and Sarah gave Emily Barbie's best friend, Skipper. Detonation. Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds, J. Robert Oppenheimer. April 11th, 2024, Monday. I was working at my desk doing the incredibly boring task of updating the course catalog on the company website when there was a knock at my office door. I looked up and saw a man that I had never seen before. "Mr. Adams? Mr. Daniel Adams?" he asked. "Yes, I'm John. What can I do for you?" "I'm Detective Miller from the State Police." "Is your wife Lisa Adams?" "Yes." "What's this all about, sir?" "I regret to inform you that your wife has been killed. Now, we don't know all the details, but I can tell you what we do know on the way to the hospital. You need to come with me now." I just sat there and looked at him. I'm sure I looked like an idiot, but I didn't know what to do or say. I tried to stand but couldn't. I reached for the phone but didn't know how to operate it. The detective put his hand out and on top of mine on the useless phone. "Sir, I'm sorry for your loss, but you need to come with me. Can I call someone for you or tell someone here?" Yeah, I need to tell my boss. I need to call someone to pick up my daughter at school." "Oh, I can't." Somehow, between the two of us, I informed my boss of my problem and got a neighbor to pick up Emily. The detective walked me out to his car and drove to the hospital. On the way, he told me what he knew. "Mr. Adams, I'm sure this will be hard to hear, but it seems that your wife's boss killed her as she sat at her desk. According to witnesses, he assaulted her from behind with a large, heavy object. He struck her over and over before some of the other employees pulled him off. She never regained consciousness. She died on the way to the hospital. We don't have a motive yet, but the building was sealed, and detectives are trying to find out the details. You wouldn't have any information that could help our investigation, would you?" I just sat quietly, watching the buildings pass, thinking of how I was going to tell Emily. When we arrived at the hospital, I wasn't required to view Lisa's body. I was more than a little afraid I would have to do that. There were enough witnesses to what happened that they had a positive identification from the scene. I had to fill out a bunch of paperwork pertaining to the disposition of her remains when the police released her body. I noticed that I used the pen that she gave me for Christmas to sign the papers. After everything was completed, I tossed the pen in the trash and just sat in the waiting room, staring at General Hospital on the television. The detective drove me back to work, where I picked up my car and drove home. Along the way, I picked up Emily. I made her dinner and put her to bed before calling Sarah and telling her about Lisa. I sat in the living room with a beer and stared at nothing. I felt nothing. April 14th, 2024, Thursday. I took off work to arrange for Lisa's cremation. Sarah went with me because I wasn't sure if I could do it by myself. Sarah moved in Saturday and has been taking care of Emily and me. She said that she was going to stay until things got back to normal. I really never intended for Lisa to die like that. I only planned to get away from her and for her to suffer in public as much as I suffered in private. I'll have to live with her death on my conscience for the rest of my life. When I got back home, I just went to bed and slept. For the first time since I found out, I slept peacefully. I didn't dream about anything. April 16th, 2024, Saturday. I grabbed a couple of boxes and headed upstairs and started packing up Lisa's bedroom. About halfway through, I found Lisa's journal again. I scanned it quickly to see if there was any reference to me knowing about her or Hart forcing us to live like a normal couple. There wasn't anything but entries about her sex fests. I reached into my pocket and pulled out Detective Miller's card and picked up the phone. "Archer here," the terse voice said on the other end of the phone. "Hello, Detective Miller. This is John Adams. I just found something that might be important in the investigation of Lisa's death. It's a journal that she kept. I read part of it, but I can't describe what I read. You've got to see it to believe it. As a matter of fact, Mr. Adams, I was going to call you. We've had a couple of major things happen in the investigation, and I need to talk to you. Is it okay if I come by your house this afternoon? Say around 2? That's fine. They'll be here." I answered the door at 2:15. "Hello, Detective Miller. This is my mother, Linda Adams. Thank you for coming over. Let's go into the living room." Sarah chimed in and asked, "Would you like something to drink?" "Just water, please, ma'am." I was a bit nervous about what the detective had to say. I pretty much knew what he was going to say, but hearing it was a lot different than thinking it. Sarah brought each of us a bottle of water and set a plate of her oatmeal cookies on the coffee table. Nobody could resist her oatmeal cookies. Archer started, "Mr. Adams, I've got several things to tell you about the investigation, some you won't like, but you need to know. First of all, there has been a major development concerning Mr. Turner. This past Monday, a judge set bail for him at $1 million during his arraignment on the murder charges. That evening, Mr. Turner's wife posted his bail. Sometime that night, she put 12 bullets into him. He's dead. The reason she killed him is directly related to the next part that I've got to tell you about. He paused, arranging in his mind exactly what he wanted to say. Sir, did you know that your wife was HIV positive? Her autopsy report came back with positive results. I said, oh my God. No, I had no idea. Well, she was, and now the state health department is involved. They're going to want you and your daughter to be tested. Don't get upset with my next question, but I've got to ask. When was the last time you had relations with your wife? I thought for a while before I answered. I knew Sarah knew what I was going to say, so I had to tell the truth. Well, at least part of it. It's been a long time. We separated in March of last year. We lived in the same house but slept in separate bedrooms. We did this mostly for our little girl. Neither of us wanted to lose her, but we didn't have any love for each other anymore. We wanted to stay under the same roof for her sake. I don't know how long this arrangement would have lasted, but it's been a year since we've been together in that way. Okay, but I think the health department is still going to want you to be tested. Can you tell me the reason you separated? It's hard to talk about, but it's all here in a journal that I found when I was cleaning out her bedroom. I also found these DVDs that show her in action. I suspected that she was seeing another man, and when I confronted her, she admitted that she was. I thought then that she was lying to protect someone, but until now, I didn't know the extent of it. It looks like she was involved with Mr. Turner at work and a lot of others. I only read part of this journal, but it looks like she had sex with an awful lot of people, and she kept a diary of what she did. You can have it. I don't want it in the house. What she did was awful. Archer took the book and opened it up to a random page. He read for a few seconds and then got a wide-eyed look on his face. I think this is going to help a lot. Actually, the health department is going to want a copy to track down all the people she may have been involved with. Who knows? We might have a major health problem on our hands. They'll keep you informed of what's happening. As for the murder case against Mr. Turner, I'm afraid that's moot. His death ended that case and started another involving his wife. I didn't tell you why she shot her husband. It's because she was HIV positive too. When she was arrested, she said she got the disease from her husband, and after a quick glance at your wife's journal, I bet he got it from your wife. However, his autopsy results are not back yet, so we don't know for sure. We have 3 people we know about already, and we've only just started. If there's anything else I can tell you or help you with, please let me know. I'll do whatever I can to help. Well, there is one other item I need to tell you. We found hundreds of DVDs in Hart's office showing your wife and other men and women. Between this journal and the videos, we may be able to track down everybody and get them checked out. I just stared at him. Tears started to form in my eyes. Thank you, Mr. Adams, said the detective. You've been very helpful. I'll keep in touch. When the detective left, Sarah turned to me and said, John, you weren't entirely honest with the officer. You knew last year what she was doing and said you couldn't do anything about it. You should have told him. Couldn't, Sarah. I already look like a simp husband, and I didn't want the police to think that I didn't have the guts to stand up to Lisa. I did stand up to Hart, Sarah, and all I got was a little trip to the hospital. I was afraid that if I said or did anything, then it would have been much worse. I didn't want to take the chance that Emily would get hurt. Did Lisa threaten Emily? No, Sarah. Lisa didn't. Hart did. He told me if I said anything to anybody about what Lisa was doing, then he'd make sure that Emily was hurt and hurt bad. I didn't want to take the chance that he'd follow through with his threat, so I kept quiet. That's why I rearranged some facts with Detective Miller just now. God, what you went through over the last year must have been pure hell. I don't blame you for hating Lisa. I'm just glad you protected Emily and took care of everything else as best as you could. Sarah, I did what I had to do. I hated myself for doing it, but I did it. But really, it's just beginning. Just wait and see. March 20th, 2024, Thursday. Detective Miller brought me a copy of the health department's preliminary report when he came to tell me that Lisa's death investigation case was closed. The problem was worse than anybody thought. It seems that the extent of the spread of the HIV infection from Lisa could reach hundreds of people. The health department was calling it an HIV hotspot. The local papers called it the Hart epidemic. Whatever you call it, there is a major HIV outbreak with Lisa and Hart incorporated directly in the center. The preliminary report said 1. Lisa had sexual relations with 75 different people that they could identify by name. There were some that they couldn't identify at all. 2. They contacted and tested all of the people she had relations with. 24 people that had contact with Lisa were HIV positive. 3. They were still tracking down any other partners that all 75 people may have had relations with, and after them, their partners and so on. 4. Since the incubation period varies, it may take 9 to 12 months to make a full determination of the extent of the outbreak. 5. They had not determined how Lisa was infected. What the official report didn't say was that Emily and I were not infected. All but one of the managers at Hart Incorporated tested positive. The Hart corporate headquarters closed down the local branch and laid off the staff, pending an investigation into criminal activities of the management and staff. The newspapers got a copy of the health department report and had a field day. Every newspaper in the state reported that the number of HIV test requests had tripled and that doctors' offices were flooded with requests for testing. Only the health department knew the 75 names, but some people came forward and talked to the press. Most of what they said was bull, and they put the blame completely on Lisa. Even the national news outlets had reports about the outbreak. The media was swarming all over town. I disconnected my phone because of threats. Sarah took Emily to school every day because I was barred from the building. They said I was a health concern. Every couple of days, a reporter would show up at the door looking for an exclusive story. I didn't even bother to answer the door anymore. I still go to work, but I get a lot of people looking at me and whispering. I do my job in silence and then go home. Life's a bitch and then you die. April 2nd, 2024, Tuesday. I got a call from my insurance company telling me that they settled Lisa's life insurance policy claim. I would be able to come down to the local office and pick up the check on Monday. Emily was the beneficiary of her $300,000 policy. That's only the first part. I had an appointment yesterday with an attorney in town that wanted me to sue Hart Incorporated for Lisa's wrongful death. He had some interpretation of the law and felt I had a good case. I don't know the law, but I said to go ahead anyway. I had nothing to lose. He also had an idea about suing all of the 75 people known to have been in Lisa's journal. He said that it was a long shot in getting any money out of them, but at least everybody's name will be in the public record. The health department closely guarded the names of the people involved, but since I had access to Lisa's journal, I could use that as the basis for the lawsuits. Again, I said go ahead. Publicity would be a bad thing for everybody involved. I just sat back and waited for the fallout. June 15th, 2024, Saturday. My attorney and I met with the lawyers from Hart Incorporated. I gave my deposition the week before, and they reviewed it and asked a lot of questions, some very personal. I answered them the best I could. Sometimes I used the words that the attorney advised me to use. At the end, they made me an offer of $300,000 to settle out of court. My attorney was flabbergasted, and he threw back a lot of legal mumbo-jumbo and threatened to leave. While their attorneys were talking among themselves, my attorney quietly whispered to me that he knew the initial offer could go 3 or 4 times higher, and he was waiting for their next bid. They made a counteroffer, and the attorneys went back and forth for over an hour. In the end, I accepted a settlement of $1.2 million. My attorney got a very large chunk of that money. As we walked out of the building, my attorney said with a very big smile, "This is going to go a very long way in making all of the other 75 individual suits settle too. We should do okay in the long run." I thought that the we he just mentioned was really him. August 26th, 2024, Thursday. Emily and I spent the summer away from the craziness at home. It was another subdued time for Sarah and me, but Emily loved the sun and her presence. It seemed that she had outgrown Barbie and now wanted video games. Oh well. I talked to Sarah about our moving. When we settled on all of the lawsuits, Emily and I could go somewhere where nobody knew us and start over. She thought it was a good idea if I took her along. I simply said, "I'll start looking." September 2nd, 2024, Friday. Today was a turning point in my life. 2 things happened. First, we settled the last of the 75 lawsuits that brought the final count to 1. I settled on 50 lawsuits, each for a modest dollar amount. 2, I dropped 15 lawsuits for various personal reasons. 3, there were 5 lawsuits dismissed in court. 4, the court threw out 2 cases for technical reasons. 5, the court dismissed 3 lawsuits when the defendants showed hardship due to their health. 6, a total of 5 lawsuits went to trial, and all found for me with substantial monetary amounts awarded. The total amount of money awarded was roughly $800,000. Again, my lawyer took a substantial chunk. Second, I settled on my house. I very quietly sold the house assets to a real estate agent for a substantially reduced amount. I just wanted to get away as quickly and as quietly as possible and start over somewhere else. The money really didn't matter. At the end of the settlement, I told him, "You now own the house, but I've got a couple of things left to do. Tomorrow, Goodwill will be taking everything out of the house furniture, kitchen stuff, beds, everything. I'm not taking anything with me. Too many bad memories. I've already sent ahead everything I want to keep. You can take anything you want before Goodwill gets here in the morning. In the afternoon, a cleaning company will come in and clean everything from top to bottom. That's the least I could do. Also, somebody will be by to pick up my other car. I sold it too. I can't drive 2 cars at the same time to get to my new home. By this time tomorrow, we will be far away from here. You can say I'm sneaking out of town in the middle of the night if you want. I don't care. In the morning, we're going to be far away from here and the past." September 3rd, 2024, Saturday. I looked back to check on Emily in the back seat and saw that she was asleep among a collection of toys. I glanced down at the morning newspaper on the seat beside me that had a front-page article about one of their reporters who received a nomination for the Pulitzer Prize in Journalism for his series of articles on the heart epidemic. At least someone was benefiting from this mess, I thought. A few days ago, the same newspaper reported on the happenings since the story broke. They said that 1. The 24 cases of HIV infection originally reported were now at 30. 2. An additional 40 people have tested positive, reportedly from contact with those that had sex with Lisa. Included was one of the heart managers that had sex with Lisa and then gave the disease to his wife and 2 of his lovers. That guy must have been a real piece of work. 3. There have been approximately 60 divorce cases filed relating to those named in the lawsuits. 4. According to the police, they responded to over 50 domestic violence calls, again related to those named in the lawsuits. 5. There have been 20 restraining orders issued by the spouses of those 75 people. 6. The state health department estimated that it will cost over $20 million in health care costs for all those infected. 7. They fired all 5 executive managers, 3 department heads, and 10 employees from the heart office. This included the entire security staff. They offered positions to the remaining 15 employees at other branch offices. 8. The city fired the chief of police and one of his officers. They too were HIV positive. 9. Nobody has yet developed full-blown AIDS. 10. Nobody ever found out how or when Lisa became infected. 11. One person was murdered. 12. One person killed themselves. We have another 1,000 miles to go before we get home. When one door is closed, don't you know, another is open. Bob Marley. March 15th, 2025. Monday. I haven't felt anything like this for a long time. I thought that Lisa ripped out of my soul any ability to feel, but lately, I've noticed that I occasionally smile at something. Usually, it's something Emily said or did. I think she's the only reason I made it this far. God, I love that little girl. As long as she stays my little girl, I may someday get past everything, but it's not going to happen today. Right now, I'm standing outside of a funeral home with my hands in my pockets, staring up at the white front door, afraid to go in. Inside are the ashes of my oldest friend. We were born on the same day. We grew up together, played together, laughed together, and learned everything about life together. Hell, we even lost our virginity together on the same camping trip. He had Sarah Marks and I had Donna Barnett. I think I got the better end of the deal. We were inseparable. We even went to the same college. That's when we got interested in different things and went down different life paths. We stayed in touch all through the years, but were never as close as when we were growing up. We grew up and became different men. But now he's dead, and I'm an emotional mess and can't go in. I don't want to make a fool of myself in front of all those people, so I don't do anything. I just stand on the sidewalk and stare at the door, hoping that the ground will open up and swallow me whole. As I stared at the door, it opened. Standing there, smiling down at me, was Mrs. Pellegrino. I hadn't seen her in almost 12 years. Except for a couple of pounds and a gray streak in her long black hair, she looked exactly as I remembered her, absolutely gorgeous. When I was a teenager, I used to lie in bed at night and think about her. I would close my eyes and see her long black hair cascading down over her broad tan shoulders, creating an ebony frame for her oh-so-delicate face. Her eyes were hypnotic, but she had the most incredible smilia smile that could light up the room or make any childhood problem go away. God, I loved that woman, but even then, I knew that it was wrong. After all, she was the mother of my best friend, a friend that is now in an urn just past the door she's holding open. Despite her beautiful smile, I stood there frozen to the sidewalk, hoping for the ground to open up. I looked down at my feet. The heat of her body forced my gaze to rise and look up. Those beautiful brown eyes and that broad smile were just inches away. "How are you, John?" she asked with her crisp, youthful voice. Even the sounds she made were gorgeous. "I'm fine, Mrs. Pellegrino. I'm just having a little trouble with my feet, though. They don't seem to want to move up the steps. I had the same problem when I got here. It's not as bad inside as you think, really." She took one final step forward and put her arms around me. The mother of my best friend, me dead best friend, was holding me, trying to comfort me. I knew that was all she was doing, but all I could think about was the warmth she radiated. I was both embarrassed and aroused. I dreamed of this long ago, and after all these years, I was surprised I still felt that way about her. But I was more surprised that I could still feel something, anything, and just knowing that was somewhat comforting. I mumbled into her hair at the side of her head. "Thank you. You can't know what he did for me, how much he meant to me. I'm just so sorry he's gone. I miss him a lot." We stood together for a while, holding each other, not saying a word. Just by holding me tenderly, she made me feel like I could almost go through the door and face what was inside. Slowly, she broke our embrace and stood looking into my eyes. She had a quizzical look on her face when she asked, "John, I've got a question for you before we go in. I need some honest answers. Okay? Sure, anything you want." Yesterday, a lawyer showed up at my door. She introduced herself and gave me an envelope. The contents were about a trust fund somebody set up in my son's name for Joshua. It's a trust fund for $1 million. $1 million. I asked her who was responsible, and she said that nobody knew. An anonymous donor arranged it. I think they do know but couldn't tell me. My question for you is this: did you have anything to do with this? Did you set up a trust fund in Manny's name? I looked her straight in her beautiful brown eyes and told the best lie I've ever told when I said, "No, ma'am. I don't know anything about it." She stood there looking at me, and I knew that I could never lie to her and get away with it. But I had to try. After a minute, her face went from serious to happy, and she smiled her beautiful broad smile at me as she whispered, "Thank you." I didn't let on that I knew that she knew, or however that goes. I just smiled back at her. "I don't know if you know, but I'm now Josh's legal guardian. You knew that Manny was sick for the last 3 years, and before he passed, we arranged for me to adopt Josh. So my grandson is now my son. I plan to use the trust fund money to see that Josh gets into the finest schools and colleges. If there is any left over, he can have it as a wedding present. Josh said that he wanted to become a doctor so he can find a cure for what killed his dad. I'm going to try to make that happen." I smiled and said, "Mrs. Pellegrino and you are old enough now to call me Anna." She lightly stroked the side of my face as she spoke. I smiled even wider and said, "Anna, I think I can go in now. Will you please escort me?" She turned toward the door and put her hand through my arm, and we walked arm in arm the few feet that seemed impossible to navigate just a few minutes ago. Once inside, a man approached and told Anna they were ready to start. Anna turned to me and kissed me on the cheek. "Please stay afterwards. I want to talk some more, and I want you to meet Josh. He's a good kid. I think you'll really like him." She smiled and pointed to the visitor's book as she quietly melted into the crowd. I signed the book and took a seat near one of the exit doors. The lady next to me handed me a box of tissues, and I helped myself to 6 or 7 before setting it down. I took them just in case. After a few minutes, everyone sat down, and a young man approached the podium. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for coming. We are here today to celebrate the life of Manny Pellegrino. We all know about his death, how he suffered and died from that plague of modern times, AIDS, but what we want to celebrate today is how he lived, not how he died. He was the friendliest and most genuinely giving man I've ever met. He was real. He was kind, and he was down-to-earth. He was so down-to-earth that nobody knew him as Manny, we all knew him as Steve. Steve would give anybody anything. That's when I lost it. I grabbed a handful of tissues and put them to my face and cried. Thanks for watching. What do you think John should do next? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories.